Welcome back to Briggs on Books, our international talk show where we talk to authors from all over the world about their book, about their process. We also talk to editors, publishers, paginators, people who help you get your book out. There's a lot of steps we're learning to getting a book out. Our next guest has been with us before, and he's a fascinating writer with very fascinating subjects. Welcome, James Ciccone from New York. Is that right, James?
That's correct. Thank you for inviting me to come back, Mike. As always, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we love to have you. And by the way, I'm going to put your book cover up on the screen. Tell us a little bit about this book, Barnfire.
Yes, thank you. My collection of short fiction titled Barnfire was published by Wang and Jean Publishers in New York and released just last week on Amazon Books, and it's a pretty hefty volume. As you can see, it's 791 pages, all springing from a single premise, namely that the facts, if given a chance, have an elegant way of speaking for themselves. Barnfire consists of 7 short stories, 2 novellas, and a prose poem. No 2 stories in Barnfire are exactly alike, precisely because the theory of Barnfire is to allow the characters to speak for themselves in their own voices. And no 2 stories sound alike because no 2 characters are exactly alike. Therefore, if we look at some of the stories, for example, the marauders on horseback in Madman of Union County shooting up gas lamps in a town in the New Mexico territory in the 1800s sound dramatically different than a recently emancipated black woman standing off horse thieves at gunpoint and only the cows get rather Until Heaven It Can Wait, or if we move forward from there, a teenager coming of age circa 1970 in a Greenwich Village nightclub sounds dramatically different from those characters from the Old West.
It does. It does. Now, I was going to ask, a lot of your books are about the Old West?
A lot of the writing is of westerns from the Western frontier in the 1800s, but some of the later stories in Barnfire are from the 1970s, the 1960s, and then there's actually a prose poem that's about a current event. So the full range of literary devices in a volume of this length, as you might imagine, are used to convey suspense, surprise, anger, reflection, and all the other human emotions. The heart of Barnfire, as in any of my writing, of course, is to entertain the reader.
Right.
But beyond entertaining the reader, in a fundamental sense, there's a much deeper goal, and that is to connect symbolism to universal themes the readers may find meaningful or even fascinating, let us hope.
Right.
I can give you an example if you have a second, Mike.
I do. I'd love to hear it.
Okay. Take the opening scene from Only the Cows Get Slaughtered as an example. This scene is set in a ranch in Eagle Pass, Texas, in the 1800s. Now, Eagle Pass, Texas in the 1800s was a sort of no man's land. The law hadn't reached yet. It was a perfect hideout for outlaws. The Calico Cowboy is invited to this ranch to try his hand at busting this mythical bronco. This bronco is the wildest of the wild. It's so wild the Mexican ranch hands don't dare get near it, no less get on it. So the Calico Cowboy eases his weight down on the bare back of this bronc, and the ranch hands have it tethered, and they're holding it with ropes, and it's in this narrow chute. There's an audience of ranch hands sitting on the top rail around the corral. Incidentally, the land is flat and dry in that part of Texas, straight out to the horizon, so you get a fairly good picture of what's going on in the story. So they throw away the ropes, pop the chute gate, and the bronc bursts free. and it begins bucking wildly, jumping and spinning and whirling in the air. The calico cowboy is desperate to hang on. He throws his spurs in front of the bronc's shoulders. He lets his right arm sail above his head like a ribbon to try to hold his balance, and it's this symbolic battle between man and beast at the center of this corral that reminds us of Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea. You remember Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea, the battle between man and fish?
Yes.
Well, this reminds us of that battle. So finally, the calico cowboy prevails to wild applause from the ranch hand sitting on the top rail. And he jumps off the bronc, still holding the rope, and the applause grows even more wild than it was before. Everybody seems to be elevating the calico cowboy to heroic status for busting this wild bronc, except one ranch hand, an older ranch hand, who's unimpressed, and he looks a bit jealous of the calico cowboy. He jumps off the fence and walks to the calico cowboy and initiates the following exchange. Ranch hand: you must feel pretty darn good about busting that bronc and all. How do you feel, cowboy? Calico cowboy: so-so. Ranch hand: so-so? How come as long as I've known you, anytime anybody ever asks you how you feel, it's always just so-so. It's never good or even great. It's always just so-so. Why? Calico cowboy: because bronc busters only really get two choices in life, so-so and no mo. I'll take so-so over no mo every time. The ranch hand persists. Bronc buster? You ain't no bronc buster. You a clown. I remember when you started out as a rodeo clown in the traveling rodeo. Calico cowboy responds: it don't matter how you start out in life, partner. It matters how you end up. So if you can picture that exchange, and with the concept of vocal range, distinguish that exchange from the exchange of a teenager coming of age and how the story How the Light gets in. He's essentially a country bumpkin who goes to the West Village, Greenwich Village in New York, to try to find out what makes the big city tick. Well, he's 18-year-old. He's really not supposed to be at a nightclub because he's underage. So he wants to find out what goes on in the big cities. What better way to do that than to go to a jazz club in Greenwich Village? He goes down the stairs and he expects to have to evade the bouncer, but to his surprise, he finds out the bouncer is actually an old school chum, it turns out. And so they have the following exchange. To distinguish that exchange from the exchange in Eagle Pass, Texas. Bouncer: Anthony Hawley, what in the hell are you doing in a jazz club in New York City? Anthony Hawley, the teenager's response: I'm waiting for the M26 bus. What in the hell does it look like? So that's to give you a flavor of the vocal range in this book.
Now, as I hinted earlier, you have Old West themes, and a couple of weeks ago we had you on talking about your book, The Horse. And as I hear you describe this book, here's the cover again, Barn Fire, which you have several stories in there. It seems like you must do an extraordinary amount of research to know, even the geography, the flat Texas geography, what it's like to lower yourself down on a Bronco and things like that. And, of course, you probably know New York pretty well, but is there a lot of research that goes on for you?
Exhaustive research.
Yeah.
Particularly in the Westerns. Western writers are noted for researching every aspect of their stories right down to the last button on the clothing of the characters. Yeah. And a fascinating part of this is, with modern technology, even though these things happened in the 1800s, the terrain is essentially the same. So you can go on YouTube and research how the terrain in that particular area looks. Yeah. You can go on YouTube, or you can go on Google Maps or any of those other apps, and you can actually, without traveling to those locations, you can see exactly what the terrain looks like. And then, of course, the other aspects of the stories you have to research exhaustively.
Can you hold up the book again and show how big of a volume it is? It's quite thick. I guess you don't have to read it all in one sitting like I usually do a book. You could read some and then go read another book and come back to this one, I guess.
Right. If you take it to the beach with you, you can spend some time reading it, and then when the wind blows, you can use it as a wake up, make sure the tent doesn't blow away.
Yeah, my goodness, that's quite a book.
791 pages.
Yeah, and so it covers a multi different time periods in our history from the 1800s to the 1960s, 1970s.
And even to 2024, there's a prose poem at the end. The prose poem gives its name to the whole volume. The prose poem is Barnfire, and it's about current events.
Things that are going on in our world right now. James, I could always talk to you for a long time, and we're running out of time, but any last thoughts for our viewers about this book or about you that you want our viewers to know?
I just would like the viewers to realize that beyond the concept of vocal range, of the idea that the characters sound differently because they are different, which is a concept that's taken from music, and you have a history as a musician or in musical history, I believe.
Yep.
It's like a saxophone solo that goes up and down the register of the saxophone. To really get the correct sound, you really have to have the vocal range. And this book, in the dialogue that spans a period from the 1800s all the way to the present day, uses vocal range. And of course, the heart of any of my stories is to connect these stories and the symbolism to the universals. And I think that is something that the readers will find meaningful.
Yeah. And I know we're out of time, but James, I have your your email address on the screen. What do you want our viewers to do with that?
If any viewer that's so inclined may correspond directly with me about Barnfire or the horse or anything I've written, I'd certainly be willing to respond. There's a study guide that I composed for my writing clinics. Mm-hmm. I'd certainly be willing to offer anyone in your audience. Beyond that, Wang and Jean Publishers in New York accepts unsolicited manuscripts from the writers who may be in your audience today. Mm-hmm. And if they're looking for a publisher that will read their stories critically, offer advice on how they might rewrite those stories, assuming a rewrite is necessary, they're welcome to submit by sending a Word document to the email address noted at the bottom of the screen.
That's great, James, that you have that opportunity and you make that available to people, and that you're so open and giving out your direct email address. We really appreciate that. I hope we met you a couple weeks ago. I've been fascinated by you ever since. I hope you'll come back again soon. Maybe you'll probably have another book out, no doubt.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me, Mike.
All right, and for our viewers, this advice I always give, go buy this book, but don't buy just one, buy a couple of copies and give them out. That's the best gift you could give is books. And thank you again, James, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, thank you. Have a nice day.